Let me start this video off by saying that I am in no way a professional writer. I am, for want of a better word, an amateur, who has dreams of one day getting something published properly. I mean, technically I do have two things that have been published by my university's Publishing Society, but I'm not too sure that really counts. Not in the least because not very many people pitch stuff, so they had to accept everything that was put forward. So please don't take my word as gospel for how to become successful. I make this video then because, as an aspiring writer, I want to catalogue my journey on hopefully becoming successful, and potentially teach somebody something along the way. Now, professionalism isn't really something I'm very good at. As you can probably tell from the way that I'm talking to you in this video, I like to keep things very casual. But when it comes to writing seriously, being more professional is something that you need to do. After all, writing is a big undertaking, especially if it is a lengthy work such as a novel. So in order to get into the swing of things and get it done, you need to look at it as more of a second job and take it seriously. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing that I found very useful in trying to become more professional and get more done is to plan out my story, and the initial stage of planning is to decide upon what story I want to write in the first place. Chances are you've already started a bunch of manuscripts but have been unable to commit to any one of them to finish it. I would suggest that you pick the one that stands out to you the most so that you don't just start writing something new and fall back into the same cycle when you get bored of your new one. When it comes to actually planning things then, I find that for me it happens in two stages, the first of which is brainstorming. Now, Google defines brainstorming as a group discussion to help solve problems. Personally, I think it's broader than that, which it's simply just idea generation. But I can't just sit down and say, okay, I'm brainstorming now and come up with ideas. I just get distracted. I find that my ideas come much more organically, usually when I'm trying to sleep so that my brain can't settle and I end up feeling awful the next morning. But also while studying, in the shower, in the bath, on the toilet, you get the idea. Entire scenes might be formulated during this period, or the complete arc of a character. Whatever happens though, I would say to not write these ideas down. The good ideas will remember themselves, developing into ever complicated monsters that keep you up all night, while similarly the bad ideas will forget themselves, too dull to be remembered. As a rule, I only ever write two things down. Eureka moments where I have an idea that's too good to risk forgetting, or if I have a particularly weird dream that would make for a really good cosmic horror Lovecraftian-esque story, and they're the only two things I allow myself to write down. Once these ideas have developed themselves in your head for a while though, to the point where you mentally have a solid framework and can recall any stage of your story, that is when the second phase of planning comes in, and that is to finally be able to write your plan down onto paper. By putting all of these events down in order, you will actually be able to see your story on paper for the first time. My idea behind this is that not only will you already be generating ideas to fill in the gaps, but since you've put in the work to get this far, you'll be invested into this project and be itching to get writing it. So, now you've got yourself a little plan for your story, and hopefully a little motivation to see this thing through. What's next? Write. Yeah, I know, what a cliche. But the reason why you always hear writers telling people that in order to write, all they have to do is simply start putting words onto the page is because it's true. They wouldn't all be saying it if it's a lie, and I can wholeheartedly say that 50,000 words into my own story, I completely agree with them. By simply writing, you'll probably develop your skills. The first thing that you write, be it your first short story or stories, or the first few chapters of your novel, will be awful. Catastrophically, miserably, soul-crushingly awful. You'll reread them at 10,000 words and think, God, this is crap. But don't let that deter you. Keep writing. Then, when at 20,000 words, that chapter or segment you wrote at 10,000 will seem just as bad as those initial words. Don't let that dissuade you from writing. After all, by the time your novel is finished, if you haven't gone over every chapter you've done 100 times, you're doing something wrong. Well, 100 times might be an exaggeration, maybe. I couldn't tell you since I haven't counted how many times I've gone back and changed things, but the point still stands. By putting words on the page, you'll be able to develop your skills. Think of the past paragraphs not as something that's ruined your story, but as evidence of your improvement. You can always go back later and rewrite stuff. Another thing that I found incredibly important in writing more professionally is to really make it a part of your life. And in order to do this, you need to set aside time in the day to write. Even 10 minutes is better than nothing. I remember hearing somewhere that if you don't sit down and write after a week, your brain will lose that drive and you will lose all of that momentum that you've built up. I apologise for not being able to quote that more directly, and the student part of me is raging right now, but the point still stands. Personally, I found that time to be halved, so if I don't write in 3 or 4 days then my momentum drops. But what I'm trying to say in a really long-winded and convoluted way is that you need to keep writing and don't stop. Find time in the day. Turn off your notifications, shut the door, lock your kids in a cupboard. I'm joking, please don't actually lock your kids in a cupboard, that's an awful idea. Or is it? And you need to do whatever it is in order to give yourself the right space to really be able to crack on and get writing. Procrastination is a killer, so remove those things that make you procrastinate, or do as Jerry Jenkins does and give yourself time of the day to procrastinate so that you can focus later on, and you'll see your word count rise a lot faster. It's amazing. I mean, it's almost as if having minimal distractions makes you more productive. Who would have thought it? Finally then, I would say the most important thing that I've learned is to let yourself enjoy what you're doing. It should never be a burden to write. When I finish my university work, I often can't wait to sit down and bring my characters to life, sometimes to the point where I may save some of my work for another day, but let's keep quiet about that. I know that after a long day of work or learning, writing can feel like a burden, like another chore, like washing the dishes. But I would say that if you really don't enjoy it that much, don't do it. If you genuinely can't find the motivation to relax and do something that you love, I would suggest contemplating if this is really something you want to try and do professionally. It's fine if not, many people write for their own pleasure or as a hobby, but if you really want to get published and meet deadlines, you have to be able to motivate yourself no matter how hard your day has been. The way that I found that really helps me to enjoy writing more is setting myself milestones. For example, I recently just did a scene for my own sci-fi story that had been brewing in my head from day one, and finally 50,000 words in I was able to realise it and bring it to life. I was really excited to finally write that scene. It is very important for the development of a particular character, and was somewhat emotional too, which was a nice challenge as it was the first time that I'd properly attempted to write something like that. It was a real milestone to pass, and I allowed myself to enjoy it and enjoy writing it. And the best thing is that only 3,000 words later I have another scene to write that I've been waiting to write since day one. Then another, and another, and another, and so on. I find this way I keep writing in order to get that feeling of achievement when I reach a milestone, so that I finally have the motivation to keep going. An added bonus of this is that if I'm enjoying writing milestone scenes every 5,000 words or so, it won't be long until I've finished my story and thoroughly enjoyed the entire process. I would say that these milestone scenes should be the main scenes that you've planned out in your plan earlier on, so that when you finally do write them and you finally manage to get that scene onto the page, you can really get that sense of achievement. So, there it is, some tips on how to start writing professionally from a beginner. Isn't that a bit of a contradiction? Oh well. But still, I hope that you found this video useful and perhaps learned a little from it. I think a key thing I want to conclude with though is that of course none of this is set in stone, and it's best to personalise some of these tips so that it works for you. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below, as well as what works for you, so we can get a bit of a conversation going and learn from each other. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon.